Welcome to Imperfect Momming. Our children are constantly looking to us for examples. The term role model doesn't quite cut it here. We are shaping their worldview with every move we make. You see, it's not in the lectures we give or moments where we are actively attempting to teach them. It's in the micro movements we make, the unconscious ways in which we navigate life. We are constantly teaching our children how to show up for themselves, their friends, their future partners, and even their future children. So what can we do to ensure we are raising thoughtful, compassionate, self-aware human beings? We have to become them ourselves. No one is perfect, but we can still all be better, and it starts with self-healing. Let's get to it. Welcome back to Imperfect Momming, and we have a very special guest today. His name is Xander.
But what about him?
And he'll be introducing our other guest.
Yes.
Who is this guy, bud?
The guy who talks too much. If you do not know who he is, you better look up Sean and make sure to add the guy who talks too much at the end. Just Sean, the guy who talks too much.
There we go. We're just having some fun.
That was one of the most meaningful introductions I've ever had.
Wow.
And it's so true.
We'll have to have Xander follow you around on your speaking, your TED Talks, and all of your videos, so he can introduce you as who you really are.
Love it.
So this is
Thank you,
Coach Sean
Xander.
Smith.
Scene Smith.
Scene Smith. So this is Coach Sean Smith, and he is our very, very special guest today because he's our first.
I'm the very, very special guest.
All right, bud. Love you. Okay. So
I'll take the second most special today. I'm good with that spot.
Perfect. Sounds good. So Sean is, I've mentioned Sean many, many, many times on the podcast in one way or another, mostly nice things, I think. But Sean gets to be our very first imperfect dad on the Imperfect Momming podcast. So welcome to the podcast.
Oh, wow. That's really cool. But am I supposed to pretend to be imperfect?
I mean, I know it's
I've started acting now, so I can probably pull that off.
Shall we bring in your kids and see how perfect
See what they have to say? No, thanks.
So tell us a little bit about who you are and what you do.
Well, those two words, what Xander said, and then the two words of imperfect dad. That's imperfect father. That sums it up pretty well. I've got two kids. So I'm a father of two, a husband of one. Been married 24 plus years. As Michelle says often, keep Sybil in your prayers, please. And my kids are 20 years old, 20-year-old daughter and a 17-year-old son. And I've been in the world of personal development for nearly 18 years. I'm a speaker and a coach, and I've been really fascinated by and committed to exploring and dissecting human behavior, what makes us do what we do. And there's so many various applications of that, obviously, many of which that I'm really compelled to keep exploring, parenting being one of them, relationships, communication, speaking, all of those things. So, I'm a teacher by heart, I guess. I'm kind of wired to be a teacher. I just love learning things and teaching it to people as much as I can and as whatever they'll listen to. I do tend to talk a lot. So I agree with Xander's assessment. And I really love being around people that are interested in the deeper conversations, dissecting it and looking at it from different angles and focusing on what the core issues really truly are. And I feel like I just want to spend the rest of my life primarily just having real and deep conversations about all the things that interest me. So this being one of them. What does it mean to be a mom? And the physical, the emotional, what does it mean to be imperfect? What are our kids needing for us as parents? So I'm really honored to be here. It's been a pleasure watching you grow over the years and grow in your commitment to this work and to your knowledge, and grow in your certainty about what you can actually help people do and understand and feel, experience, all of that. But under the umbrella of parenting, I've always been fascinated by the roots of human behavior. And so anytime that we look at the programs that we have in our lives, it's always going to come back to our childhood. How were we programmed? Did we experience trauma? Did we experience nurturing? What are all of the collective experiences that we had in our childhood? And those are all going to be formative into our adult programming and our patterns and habits and drivers and desires and values and all the things. So if we really want to dissect anything that is important to us in our lives as humans, we have to take into account our childhood. And if we're going to take into account our childhood, we have to discuss parenting. What did we learn from our parents? For those of us that want to be conscious parents, what did we learn that will help us enable and empower our children in whatever way we want to? So it's great to be here with you on your own podcast and the branding that supports the book and all of that you've stepped into. And yeah, I'm excited to see where this goes.
Yeah, I don't know if even you're aware of this. There was a video that you did that's on your YouTube channel with one of the women in our community. And I remember very clearly her saying, the better person that I became, the better parent that I became. And that is the premise of this podcast, is better parenting through self-healing. And because we're just a bunch of imperfect people who were raised by imperfect people who were raised by imperfect people, and we're raising imperfect people. So it's this crazy cycle that I've seen a lot on social media about, let's break these cycles, these generational traumas. And the reason I asked you on the podcast is because today you're releasing your book that I've been waiting for like 8 years.
Yeah, you and me both. It's literally been 8 years. I wrote the first draft of it in 2014. Right at the end of the year is when I finished it. Actually, no, that's not true. It wasn't at the very end of the year, but it was towards the end of 2014. And now here we are towards the end of 2022. So it is 8 years since the beginning of that book.
And the way that you created the book, I thought was really interesting, just because I'm just the writer. So I'll just sit down and I'll just write a book.
Yeah, not
but
me.
You're more of a speaker. And so you sat down in front of however many people on a Zoom call and recorded the bullet points. And I watched that video in 2016, and it changed my relationship with my dad. It changed my relationship with my son. And the thing that I quote all the time is when you made the suggestion of, who do you want your daughter to attract as a partner? And write down those traits and then become that man. And two things came out of that for me. I asked my dad to write me a letter of the traits that he wanted me to look for in a partner. And then I thought about the traits that I wanted my son to have. in his partner. And on a daily basis, I work on becoming that person.
That is so cool.
Yeah.
I don't know that I knew that you watched it in 2016, and because that was one of your very early interactions. Then
It was
with
the first program that I was in of yours, is
my whole
the direct
world.
sales one, and then somehow I got on an email list, and you emailed it out, and I watched it, and it's just world changing for me.
Wow, that's really cool.
Yeah.
Thank you for sharing that and for starting this conversation with that. I think, well, to your point about how I created the book, one of the big problems that I think a lot of people have with creativity is trying to force themselves into somebody else's box, specifically about how to create. So you are a writer, you like to sit down and just write. I tried that. I don't know if you even know this. I don't share this all that often, but I started to write a book in 2018 called How to Raise Empowered Kids. Did you even know that?
It sounds somewhat familiar, but
okay.
Yeah.
So I think it was 2008, 2009. And I had learned a lot in the first couple of years of being a coach and a speaker about how important the role of parenting is, and that most of our limiting beliefs are created in childhood and involving a parent or both, or the absence of one or something, right? So parenting is very significant in the creation of our limiting beliefs. And our belief system will essentially create our entire life experience. What we believe will usually manifest itself, to a T. So if beliefs are that important, and if they usually start in childhood, then my thought was, let's tell the parents, because most of us don't know that. Yeah. And we don't really know exactly what leads to limiting beliefs. And I remember something happened when one of our kids were really young. I mean, they were both young, but I don't remember if it was my daughter McKenna or my son Exley. One of them came home from school or had some experience with people at the park or something like that. And they made a statement. Whatever the statement was, I recognized it, and my wife recognized it as the beginning of a potentially disempowering belief. Mm-hmm. All because we had been studying beliefs. And when you study it, every belief has an origin, and we create some story based on some experience. And then in our adult experience, we're trying to go back and rewrite the belief, essentially, right? And so it was really interesting for us to recognize, oh, this is their beginning of the story. And we both didn't want it to be, so we jumped in and did what we could to change the story. And it was something about like them not being able to sing or draw or something, like I'm not good at that thing. And we pounced on it. We're like, who told you that? Who lied to you? And it was a teacher. Like, that's absolutely untrue. You're amazing. And we did whatever we could to squash it before it took hold, right? And I don't know that didn't eventually take hold on them. I mean, I don't know how you measure that thing, but at least we took an action based on our studying of limiting beliefs. And so then I thought, most of us have not learned this from a parenting standpoint. How do we do everything that we can to try to help our kids avoid the deepest, darkest, most powerful and problematic limiting beliefs, so that we can actively make it an intentional part of our parenting, rather than just hope that they don't pick it up somewhere, right? Mm-hmm. And if you know what to look for, you can hear it, you can see it, but you got to know what to look for. And to my knowledge, there is no parenting manual out there. There certainly wasn't when we had kids. And so I wanted to just tell parents what I'd been learning about limiting beliefs. And the whole idea was most people's belief systems are disempowering. So, and most parents want their kids to be empowered. That might not be the exact word that they use, but they want their kids to, live a good life and have freedom and all the things, right? And so that was the title that I was going with, How to Raise Empowered Kids. So I sat down, I think at a coffee shop somewhere, and I started writing. I had taken a bunch of notes over the years and collected them. And so I started writing. The first couple of days, I wrote probably 5 or 6 pages, with all the research that I had done and collecting of all my thoughts and all that. And then the third day I sat down and I read the first 6 pages that I wrote and edited those and then added a little bit more. So now I had like 8 pages after 3 days. And then the fourth day I sat down and edited all of those 8 pages and then added 1 more page. So now I have 9 pages. And then the 5th day I sat down, and then the 6th day I didn't sit down because it was so miserable. The process was so miserable because I kept writing and then editing and then rereading and then rewriting and then editing and then getting frustrated. And it was because I was forcing myself to create in a way that's not the best way for me to create. The best way for me to create, as you said, is just give me a word or a phrase or a letter and get out of my way. And I'll just talk, right? I just talk and talk and talk and talk. So as irritating as that may be in certain, in certain contexts and situations, it's like a creative superpower of mine because I create on the fly with a live audience more than I create on a keyboard with no audience. And some people are the opposite of that. And what I think one of the biggest reasons that a lot of people don't create things that they could otherwise create is because it's like they're in the wrong creation lane. They're a writer, but they're trying to be a speaker, or they're a speaker and they're trying to be a writer. Or a lot of people create verbally a lot better than with the written word. Could be because of insecurities, or they just don't like to type, or whatever the case is. And so it's better to just pull out a recorder and speak it and then have somebody else write it down. So to your point, when I recognized that I was in my own way with this book, and because my first attempt at How to Raise Empowered Kids was so miserable, I didn't go back to trying to write a book for years. And then I was having a conversation with a woman. I was telling her about how in all of my years, at that point is like 6 years of coaching women, primarily in Mary Kay, virtually all the conversations go to self-esteem because that's what the root of fear of failure and fear of rejection and fear of visibility and fear of success and all that stuff is really based on a self-esteem problem, deficiency. And so when we dive into that, what I found is that the initial seed for a woman's self-esteem is her relationship with her dad. And I didn't read that anywhere. I didn't think that anywhere. I just noticed that every time, almost every single time we dove into self-esteem, that's where we landed. Yeah. So I was telling a friend of mine, like, you know what I'm finding out? Virtually everything goes all the way back to dad. And it's not even just, did they have a good relationship with their dad, or did the dad, not abandon them or not abuse them? It's like one single thing. I keep hearing it over and over and over and over again. Was my dad proud of me? And so I was telling this to a friend of mine, and I was like, somebody's got to write a book for dads. Like, they got to know this stuff, because it started changing the way I parented my daughter. So when my daughter was 4 or 5 at that time, I would go in. Actually, she was must have been older than that, maybe 10 or so. I would go in, and when she was lying down and going to sleep, I would just whisper in her ear, "I'm proud of you." Or when she was asleep, before I went to bed, "I'm proud of you." And I intentionally made a point to tell her, "I'm proud of you," like constantly, when she's awake, when she's asleep, everything, and have it not be conditional at all. Like, I'm not proud of you because you put your clothes on, or you cleaned your room, or, you did something good. Like, I'm not proud of you because you performed. I'm just proud of you. period. That is because of all of this coaching that I had done with so many women clients. And so then when I was telling my friend this, she kind of leans in and she goes, "Hey, dummy, you need to write that book." And I go, "Oh, that's interesting." And that was the initial seeds of this particular book. So I put it in the father-daughter context, not just how to raise empowered kids in general, but let me speak to something that is deep and dear for me because I am a father of a daughter. She's my first child. And I have all this experience with women. And so this book is basically just like my reporting. You know, it's written specifically to fathers of this is what I've learned along the way. So say this, don't say this, do this, don't do that, don't roll your eyes, like don't do all this stuff. And none of it is theory. It's not like, here's what I think might happen if you come home from work and your daughter asks to play dolls with you and you roll your eyes at her and tell her that she can wait until after dinner. Like, no. That's the exact story that one of my female clients told me. So I'm just telling you what I've been told. I'm not telling you theory. I'm not telling you what I think. I'm just relaying. And so because of that, the book it's like this sacred message that I don't actually even feel a lot of ownership of, because I feel like it's not my content. I didn't just sit down and, create a framework and the 7 C's to raising, confident daughters. It's just like, oh, I've heard this and I've heard this and I've heard this and I've heard that. And that's how the book started. And that's how the book, I don't want to say ended, because like I feel like it's just starting its mission in the world, but that's how it was created. And so, and you kind of alluded to it. What I decided to do is I collected a lot of ideas that I had and just put together an outline. And in 2014, I think is when I did that webinar, I just had like this open live webinar of, I don't even know if I named it, Daddy, Are You Proud of Me? Or anything that is in any of the current titles. It was just like an open co-creative kind of teaching. And it was probably an hour and a half or 2 hours, something like that. And I was like, I'm thinking about this and I've heard about this, and I was getting comments from other people on the webinar. And it was just this really cool co-creative process. And then when I decided that I need to write this book, like actually get it into book form, I asked my wife to watch the webinar and put it into a book form, because she is a writer similar to you. She likes getting on the computer and actually typing. So she took my teaching and then put it into book format, and then I edited it. And so since then I did hire a professional editor, and I've gone through multiple iterations of editing. But if it was up to me to get the first draft of that book out, it still wouldn't be done and probably would never be done. So from a creative standpoint, one of my messages to anybody that has something to create is make sure you learn how you create best, and then get out of your way and just do that. Do the thing that you do best. And if it's not typing, then hire somebody else to do it, or trade with somebody else to do it. Like, there are people that love writing and they would love to take, right, you included, they would love to take content. I mean, you used to do that for our company, like take content, take audios and put it into an article. I think we have like maybe 200 or 300 articles over the course of 18 years on a couple different websites. I've written, actually, I was going to say none of them. I think I've written like 5 of them, and all of them took a painful amount of time to write. But finally I was like, I'm not doing this, but it needs to get done. So let's hire somebody. My wife for a long time was just taking my audios and creating articles out of them. So from a creative standpoint, I think it's really important for us to just stay in our lane of creativity. And there are a lot of different ones. It's not just, do you write or do you speak? For some people, it's, do you need to write an hour every day. And for some people that are writers, maybe they need to go to the mountains and just write for 4 straight days, with no break. For other people, they need to have somebody just ask them questions, because when people ask questions, it's easy to just answer the questions rather than for you to just search your mind and go, this is what I want to teach. And this is what I want to teach. So there's multiple different ways of creating. And what I think is profoundly sad is that a lot of people who want to create videos or books, I think a lot of people kind of dream of writing books. Mm-hmm. I think books hold this like sacred place in our society of, just like aspirations for a lot of people. But because of the insecurities that we have, or we don't like the process, or for a number of reasons, most people will never write the book that they wish they wrote. And a lot of it has to do with not finding their unique, personalized way to create. And so you can have a book written. You don't actually have to write your book.
Yeah. My way of writing my surrogacy book was asking people, what do you want to know about surrogacy? And I have, as of today, 18 more questions to answer to finish that
Love
book.
it.
And I answered 5 questions this morning, and it was just like, I was on a call with you yesterday where we were talking about creativity, and you laid out these 4 I think there were 4 stages. I was kind of in and out of the conversation because of my appointments, but
sure.
I think you said 4 stages of releasing this this thing that you've birthed, mm-hmm. and the judgments that come along with it, and the expectations that come along with it. And I was like, oh my gosh, that was the exact experience I had in 2008 when I released my first fiction book. It was like I had this expectation that I would immediately be J.K. Rowling. And
I know, right?
J.K. Rowling wasn't immediately J.K. Rowling, but that
exactly.
was the expectation that I had. And I used that as a reason to stop writing for 12 years.
Yeah.
And because I asked myself the question, if I can't publish the next book, because I let go of the rights to my characters. Don't ever do that. So I had 2 other books to go along with this first one, and I didn't like this company. I wasn't going to use them again. And I didn't have the rights to my characters any longer. And so I was like, well, what's the point? If I can't publish, what's the point? The answer that I never answered is because I love writing, and writing makes me excited and puts me in a good mood, and probably makes me a better parent, and like that's
how about that?
That's the reason, is because I love to do it, not because I'm gonna publish something. If only
so
you were
I
around
think
in 2008.
Yeah, I mean, I'm glad that you picked it back up, because a lot of people never will. And maybe look back on their lives and just regret never writing a book or never taking a chance or whatever it is that we have dreams about. I think one of the really important pieces that you just highlighted is that with creativity, there needs to be, for most people, there needs to be an internal, what's the best way to phrase this? Like just an internal not self-fulfilling, but I'll just say self-fulfilling, like a self-fulfilling reason to write. And you just gave one of them, because I love to do it. Like there doesn't need to be anything more after that. There doesn't need to be any justification after that. Or why do you need to write? Just because I have a message, because I'm a teacher and teachers teach, because I have something that I've learned and I need to get it out of me. So what I mean by that is there's got to be an intrinsic reason to create for most of us. When the reason to create is extrinsic, meaning you're going to create something only if other people like it or other people buy it, or you become the next J.K. Rowling or whatever that external circumstance is, then we have conditional creativity where we say we're only going to create if that external thing happens. And then we don't give ourselves permission to create unless we know that that external thing is going to happen. And then we're asking ourselves to be able to predict the future, which is not possible. So then a lot of us won't create because we don't have a guaranteed external win. But worse than that is actually, I think, if somebody does create a product for the external validation, then what I would say is that thing that you created is not even your creation. So now it's like just this bastardized version of what you think other people want. So now that's not actually creativity.
And how many times have you heard your clients say that a parent told them, well, you're not going to make any money out of that, so why are you learning how to do it? Why are you doing it?
How many times today?
Right. Exactly.
Only nearly 100% of the time, because our society does not value creativity the way it values productivity. So if you can get a degree and then get a job, and that job can pay you for being useful, society values that. If you sit in your room and write poetry or songs and write books, and it's not immediately productive, society doesn't value that. Because I think society doesn't understand that, which is also profoundly sad, I think, because the creatives in society, I believe, are actually the ones that need to heal society and fix society. It's creatives who can design solutions that don't currently exist. That is an act of creativity. Creativity is building something that doesn't currently exist. That is creativity. So the fact that our society, it makes sense if you think about it, like, why would the building of society value something that doesn't fit in the building? So it's like, in order for society to continue the way it's always continued, it can't be having people continue to dream up these solutions of creativity and start changing things, right? So it does make sense that society sort of polices itself and says, this is what I need. I need you to continue to feed me what I want. And I want productive citizens. I want people that I can put into my machine and then produce something. So we have a programming that is, I believe, pretty universally prevalent, that the arts are not valued in society. So when people say they want to be an artist, they want to be a singer, they want to be a dancer, choreographer, they want to, be a poet, any of that stuff, maybe even an author. Although I think this is interesting. I think being an author has less of that immediate pushback. And I think it's because of what I said earlier, that books all throughout the civilizations of human society, authors have always been put on a certain pedestal. They are the scholars. They are the thought leaders. So people who write books, I think, already have some built-in credibility. And so I don't believe people that say, I want to be an author, get the same amount of pushback or in the same way as somebody that goes, I want to be an actor. I want to be a singer. And right away, the parents quite often will say, yeah, that's not going to work. You're not going to make money. What's your fallback? What's your plan B?
Mhm.
And even though I believe that the majority of the time it's coming from a good place from the parents, they just want their children to be safe and secure. It's really damaging because saying that you want to be an artist is a vulnerable claim by itself.
Mhm.
Saying you want to be a creator is already vulnerable. And then can we swear on your podcast or no?
Sure.
I won't say anything really bad, but when people shit on your creativity like that,
Yeah.
it's really damaging emotionally. And especially from our parents, because as children, we want our parents to protect our dreams. It's not just protect our bodies in a physical sense or emotions, but like our parents should be champions of our dreams also.
Mhm.
And so when a child says, Mommy, Daddy, this is what I want to do, this is what I want to be, especially if there's some excitement there, if the parent does not celebrate that, even if the parent doesn't explicitly condemn it, if they don't celebrate it, it does damage to the child. I watched it not too long ago because my son recently decided that he wants to be an actor.
Mhm.
And being the type of father that I am, but also just the type of person that I am, I hear I want to do this when I grow up. And I'm like, all right, well, let's take everything else off the table, right? Like, let's go all in. If we've got something like this, let's go all in. So very soon after he decided he wanted to be an actor, I said, well, we should take you out of school then. Like, let's look into independent study, because if you want to be an actor, you're going on auditions. Like, you can't do that just around your school schedule.
Yeah.
I mean, there's just going to be times you can't do it. Right. And so it was actually my initial idea. And eventually he didn't have a whole lot of pushback, but he liked the idea. You know who doesn't like that idea?
I know, but you can share.
They're never going to listen to this podcast.
Probably not.
Sybil's parents don't like that idea.
Right. Yeah.
I've got my own history that you know a lot about. But when he told them that he wanted to be an actor, their response was anything but celebration.
What's your backup plan?
Yep. And it wasn't even what was said. It was what was shown. They reacted in a way that was very clear they don't approve.
Mhm.
Now, depending on where we want this episode to go, there was a piece of me that was ready and wanted them to explicitly disapprove, because then there would have been problems with me.
Mhm.
But they didn't. But they just implicitly, more condescendingly disapproved and asked questions with just a crappy attitude and like tonality and like, well, you're never going to make money, or what are you going to do to make money, or have you gotten paid yet, or any of that kind of stuff, right?
Mhm.
And I'm sitting there as his dad, just going, that's not going to happen, right? Now, this actually happened before we pulled him out of school. He's doing independent studies. We didn't take him out of school. He's just doing independent study. And the kid has a 4.8 GPA. So he's fine.
Good.
He's fine, right? He's going to be able to do whatever he wants. But we didn't tell him that we had pulled him or we put him in independent study because we just didn't want to deal with it. And they eventually found out just a few weeks ago, actually, they found out, and they didn't like that. But you know what? It is coming from a place of security. I'm wise enough to know that they want what's best for him. And according to their programming, what that looks like is get a safe job. Ideally, government job, benefits, safe, secure 9 to 5. Now, you know me enough to know that I would stab myself and just happily bleed out before I spend the rest of my life working a safe 9 to 5 government job, which I did for a year. And I quit.
That's how you know.
So that's how I know.
Enjoy it.
Exactly. So I can recognize and to some degree appreciate that they're just trying to keep him safe according to their view of the world. And that view of the world does not value creativity. Now, they also don't value life coaching. So the fact that I've been doing that for 18 years, they don't get it. They don't understand the concept. I don't think they want to understand the concept. I think they are genuinely surprised that I'm still doing this hobby. Because it just doesn't
all the
fit into the
bills and
worldview.
everything.
Yeah.
Yeah.
It just doesn't fit into the worldview. And so I think that's a really important piece. And I'm glad you asked the question, that creatives usually get shut down very early on in their lives. At some point, we try to sing, we try to dance, we show somebody our poems, we try to do something creative on an art project, and somebody says, they usually don't say these exact words, but the message is, don't do that again, because I'm going to withhold my approval of you, or I'm going to shame you, or we're going to laugh at you or something. And creatives, it's like we're tender. And when we share a tender creation and then somebody shits on it, we don't want to do that again.
Right.
And I would say there's so many people that will then live the rest of their lives making sure they never tell anybody that they actually have a collection of poems in their computer, or that they started writing a book one time. Like, people just suppress the creativity because of the fear of that backlash that you alluded to, that you asked me the question about. So just to reiterate, almost all the time, somebody that wants to be more creative. And here's the other thing. We're all creatives.
Mhm.
To be a human is to be creative. We don't create the same way. We don't create the same things, but we are all creative creatures. Most of us get that beaten out of us. Sometimes, unfortunately, literally, most of the time, I would say verbally or emotionally, we get creativity shamed on, and then we repress it internally ourselves. And that's a tragedy, because number one, creativity just makes us come alive. And what we can add to society is incredible. So we need to understand that when we tell people that care about us that we want to be creative, more often than not, their response will not be welcome. Their response will not be a nurturing one. It will not be an empowering one. It will not be anything that feels good. They will either specifically object or just object with silence. But both of those, especially to a young kid, send the message, what you just did is wrong. Now, the other piece to this is, I think that most of the time, they're also protecting themselves from confronting the fact that they have dreams that they quit on. And as much as it might not make sense when we're talking about family members and people that you genuinely care about, it doesn't feel good to be reminded all the time that somebody that you know is living the same dream that you had, or just living any dream and you quit on yours. So I think because the society is doing all the things that we've been talking about as far as repressing creativity, I think a lot of people have repressed creative dreams, and it's easier for them to shut other people down unconsciously or consciously than it is to confront the fact that they haven't written in 12 years or they haven't written in 5 decades, right? So there's that, I think, this programmed human response to quiet the threat, right? Quiet the emotional threat.
Mhm.
And I think those two things together, those two things being the desire for safety and security and what that means, and repressed creative dreams, that combination is why creativity is usually not celebrated early on in our society, which is, yeah, it's crappy, but it is what it is. So if anybody's listening to this and you're like, oh yeah, my mom said that, or my dad said that, or they didn't support me, no, it's fine. Like, I think you have, here's the other thing. I think we actually have to experience some level of pushback, whether it's external or internal, for us to move through that resistance and fight for our creativity. I think if we never actually fight for our creativity, then we won't have the kind of relationship to it and with it that we need for us to manifest it, going on. So not only is the internal or external resistance common, I think it's actually necessary.
Part of the process. It's part of the recipe.
Part of the process. 100%.
I believe, if I'm not mistaken, that my grandpa, I have always said that he squished the creativity out of my dad. That's always been the phrase that I've used, is that he squished the creativity out of my dad, because my dad wanted to be an artist.
That's interesting.
And my dad's approach to parenting ended up being, I'm going to do the exact opposite of what my dad did. So his dad was very much, you're going to be under my thumb. So my dad was very hands off, and my oldest brother is an artist. My second oldest brother is a art teacher. You all know me.
Mm-hmm.
And the only one that's not traditional art is my youngest brother, and he's a basketball coach, but he's following his passion. He's passionate about it. So I think that goes on the same lines. But
absolutely, that's a form of creativity. Yeah, just the passion.
Yeah. So is there a piece of advice that you want to share with our moms listening?
I think the main advice is wrapped up in the title of this podcast and the essence of just being imperfect and embracing the imperfection. We, as parents in general, and moms specifically, we are all going to mess up from the perspective of our kids. It's impossible not to. If we're too hard on them, they wish that we would relax a little bit. If we relax, they wish that we would provide them discipline, right? If we're the helicopter parent, that's going to create its own manifestations. But then if we're hands off, that's going to create different manifestations, right? So it's really just like, which wrong road have you walked down?
Right.
They're all wrong from the child's perspective, because there's an infinite number of opportunities as our children are growing for them to decide that you're not doing it the way that you should. And some of those are extremely immature decisions that they're making when they're really young. You're not letting me eat cookies before bed, and you're not letting me stay up as long as I want, all just the primal desires that kids have when they're super young. And then some of them are, come through the teenage filters of, you're not letting me stay out till midnight. You're not letting me do what my friends do, and all those things, right? So it's really from the child's perspective, just which wrong road did you go down? And how did you mess them up? But in the same breath, because all the roads are wrong, then all the roads are also right. Because no matter what you do, it's okay. And especially if you're scared of doing the wrong thing. I believe that if we are afraid of doing the wrong thing as a parent, it's nearly impossible to do that, because it's the care that matters the most. And even if we discipline our kids or we say things that we wish we wouldn't have said, the fact that we care will cause us to maybe pick up that conversation later, or explain what we were thinking, or just simply apologize, or not do it a second time. Like it's that the give a damn factor that causes parents to be afraid of messing up. I think the worst parents, and I'm not saying that from a personal judgmental place, but the worst parenting comes when the parents don't care about being wrong because they think they're right. Everything they do is right. And so they don't even contemplate, maybe I should have done it this way. Maybe I should have done it that way. No. Because those kinds of parents usually shut down all forms of creativity and individuality and exploration on the children's part. And those kids literally grow up, and I believe it manifests into PTSD, like genuinely PTSD, where everything they do, they're scared of getting in trouble because nothing is celebrated, because everything that the parent does is right. Everything that the child does is wrong. That's just the way it is. So in my experience, that's the most damage that parenting does to kids, is when the parent, which I think, could be argued is some kind of like sociopathy, right? Like sociopath pathology, where you don't care so much that you don't give a damn if you do anything wrong, because you're always right. That on a consistent basis, that sends the message that the child is invalid, that the child will never be good enough, that every attempt they make, there's going to be something wrong with it. And then it's just so easy to internalize that. And I've had so many clients that tell that story of no matter what I did, everything was wrong. Everything was picked apart. And it came from this, place of the parents always being right. And so in my experience, and again, I'm not trying to be like morally judgmental or superior or anything like that. I'm just telling you, this is what I've learned from the coaching that I've done and the parenting styles that lead to the problematic behaviors and beliefs. If you care about not messing up your kids, and you read books and you listen to podcasts like this, and you're just constantly exploring and you're doing what you can, like you're doing your best, your kids will forgive you for virtually everything. They might not forgive you in the moment. They might hold grudges for a while. I mean, I think part of that is just being a kid. And I think we were all angry at somebody or someone for, some amount of time, but now we can look back and go, no, they were trying their best. If we genuinely are trying our best, I believe the kids can feel it. Mm-hmm. And I think then anything that happens, if it comes from the perspective of trying my best, will be forgiven. Not that it's our children's place to, forgive us from like a biblical perspective or any moral perspective like that. But like, if you're honestly trying the best, you're showing your children I'm putting this in air quotes, the right thing, because you're trying your best. And then we all have our own different styles, right? And that doesn't mean that you shouldn't, or you should punish them in certain ways, or, have certain discussions, or let them have a phone when they're 10, or like all of those little micro parental decisions, I think mean less if they come in the like macro umbrella of I'm trying my best. I'm an imperfect person. You are an imperfect person. Let's just lock arms here and do what we can, both being imperfect. And then I think with that parental worldview, if we look at the world through that filter, then it'll be easier to be more gentle with ourselves. And there are times, especially as women, and I'm only speaking through anecdotal experience, obviously, but I've learned how insanely difficult it is to be a woman in today's society, probably all of society forever, in terms of the expectations. And one of the expectations that I think society places on women is to take care of everybody all the time about all the things first. And then if there's any dampness left in the towel that you can potentially wring out, then, go ahead and take a few drops for yourself, right? I think that programming of what makes women valuable and what makes mothers valuable is massively damaging to women, but also to the kids, because a lot of kids then grow up with, I know one of the things you talk about a lot is mommy guilt, and parenting with guilt is a lose-lose for everybody. It's not a good way to experience your motherhood. It's also not a good way to be parented by the child, because guilt is in there, and guilt is, comes with resentment and comes with invalidation, and it comes with all kinds of negative experiences. So removing the guilt from your being, from your body, from your emotions, from your heart will fundamentally change the way that you parent, but also the way that you experience parenting. And part of that whole conversation is to give yourself permission to be real. Yeah. Give yourself permission to be mad at your kids sometimes. Give yourself permission to want to punch something. There's so much repression in society in general, but I think for women specifically, repression of two main things that's coming to me right now: desire and anger. And they're actually linked at a deeper level. I think women and mothers are programmed to repress anger as well as repress your desires, taking care of yourself, or just, I don't want to be a mom for a day, like whatever that is. So be gentle with your humanity in your mothering process, in your mothering journey. And whatever that looks like, that's what it looks like. Just like we were talking about creativity, mothers also have different lanes of nurturing. And so much of it depends, obviously, how we were nurtured, or how you were nurtured as kids, society's programming, cultural, maybe even regional, like where you are in the world or where you are in your country. Like there's so many variables. Religion plays a part in that, media, entertainment, our schooling, there's so many variables of programming that there are no two mothers out there that have the same programming collections. So who you are and how you mother and what you want is all valid. And so it's about being true to yourself. And I think if there's maybe one of the best gifts, if not the best gift that you can give your children, is to simply be the best version of you as a person first. Because being a mother is a role. It's not an entity. Every single one of you was a little girl, and then an older girl, and a woman before you were a mother. Mm-hmm. So don't allow the role of motherhood. And then, of course, from an age perspective, you're going to find yourself on that line somewhere in the continuum, right? Depending on whether you got, became a mother in your teenage years or in your 30s or 40s or whatever. But there was so many things that you were before you were a mother. And I find a lot of moms lose their sense of self under the guise of sacrifice in order to be the best mom that they can be with all of society's expectations. And then they lose connection to who they are as a person, as a human. And actually, one of the first experiences that was really profound for me as a coach was talking to a woman who had, I believe, 4 children, and her youngest child had just left the house as an adult, moved out, like, didn't just go to the store, but moved out. So now she was an empty nester, and she had been a mom for like 35 years. As soon as her kids were out of her house, she literally did not know what to do with her life. And I was asking her questions like, what do you enjoy? And she couldn't answer them. No. What did you like to do? No answer. What do you want to do? No answer. I mean, truly, it was eerie and also really sad, because it was as if she had no life in her. Like, once her children left, she had no meaning in life anymore, because all of her identity left with her role of mom. And that was the first time that I saw it. And I've not seen anything to that degree since, but it really taught me how we can completely lose ourselves in a negative way by attaching to a piece of us and sacrificing the rest of us that actually fuel that piece, right? So what I believe to be true, I know you believe this to be true. I don't think this is yet in society's common programming toward moms, is that the happier you are as a person, the better mom you're going to be. Mm-hmm. The more healing that you do, the less your children are going to feel the effects of your wounding, because you're not just going to erupt on them. You're not going to take your childhood trauma and make them pay for it. Right. And so the more, and you said this early on in the conversation, the more that you become a better you, whatever that looks like, the more connection I think you can have to yourself as a mother, to your children, the more joy you can have, the more freedom you can have, the more control you can have, the more everything. Like it just increases your capacity in every single area of being a mother. And I would say one more thing is, man, I actually get really sad when I see moms tearing down other moms. Like with shame and blame and judgment. I mean, based on what we're talking about right now, it's hard enough.
Right.
It's hard enough without players on your own team attacking you too. And I think there is a kind of a natural, maybe what I would say is more of a natural nurturing family element to just being female. Like even if somebody doesn't have a child, there's still a mothering essence to the feminine energy. And so I think women, and nothing that I say is meant to, be sexist or demeaning in any way. So, I pre-apologize if any of it comes out that way. It's not what I'm intending. Cause I'm not judging it, but I do think there's just, it's just a different social interaction, dynamic, between women and men. And women are already more nurturing, I think, from a primal standpoint, but also from a programming standpoint, than men are. And so when women turn on each other, it's like a bigger problem than when men do.
Mhm.
When men turn on each other, part of that is just male culture.
Mhm.
And again, I'm not trying to dismiss any of that, but you know, when that testosterone and masculinity fights against itself, it's kind of like what it does, right? But when the feminine energy does not love and nurture, and women don't feel love and nurturing from the feminine crowd, the female crowd specifically, and other moms even more specifically, then it's like a bigger betrayal
Mhm.
than I think it even is for men.
Yeah.
And I mean, you carry children. You know, your body is designed to carry, create, nurture life, which means I think what you need is just different than what fathers need.
Mm.
And so I would just love to see, and I don't see it a whole lot, but when I do see it, I just get, I can feel sadness of like, listen, I mean, this is an uphill battle already, right? Don't fight against each other. Don't be trying to trip each other. Right? It's already hard. Band together. And I think the power of feminine, what's the best word? Like the power of feminine, this word is important. I want to wait for it. Allegiance. I don't know if that's the best word.
Unity is the word that came to
Unity
mind.
is a great word. Yeah, that's even better than just allegiance. The power of feminine unity is so much stronger than masculine unity, because the feminine energy is creative. You know, it literally creates life and holds life, and it's just rooted deeper. And so it saddens me when I see women, and I don't think it's intentional. So again, I'm not trying to be, you know, judgmental and shameful, but it saddens me when I see any kind of fragmentation among mothers, specifically fragmentation of judgment, fragmentation of politics, fragmentation of anything that pulls like the entity of motherhood on this whole planet. Anything that weakens that is sad to me, because I actually think it's the only thing that's going to heal our whole planet, is that kind of feminine union and creativity and strength that truthfully men can't comprehend. We don't know what it's like to carry a child, obviously, but we don't know what it's like to have that motherly strength inside of us. It's way deeper and way more powerful than masculine force.
And
so that's what's on my heart.
Yeah. And I think there's probably 40, 50 things that I could think to add and have 4 more hours of talking to you just to start.
Just to start. Yeah.
Just start. But we have speaking of creativity, we have a concert to go to.
Awesome.
Xander's playing the drums tonight, so I get to see
yeah.
drummer. But I want you to tell.
That's amazing.
I mean, he impresses me so much. I just posted a video of him doing a SNL throwback to the "We Need More Cowbell."
Nice.
That's pretty funny.
That's hilarious.
But I want you to tell our listeners where they can find you and your amazing book that has to be, on the bestsellers list immediately.
Well, thank you for that. I appreciate it. Everywhere on social media, I am Coach Sean Smith, SEAN. And the book can be found on Amazon. The easiest place to go is to my website, coachseansmith.com/daddy. And then that'll have all the links that will direct you to the, to the right place on Amazon. And then we also have a special right now where anybody that buys the book, they can send me a receipt of, because I don't see who buys books, like, and I don't get people's emails and all that stuff when people buy books on Amazon. So if somebody buys the book and then sends us a receipt of the purchase, then we're also giving them access to the audiobook currently, just as a free bonus. And you know this, that I read the whole book over the course of 10 different sessions, and ended up having a lot of discussion and answered questions and co-created. And so the audiobook is really, really rich. And I haven't edited it. So what we're giving people is the unedited, raw audiobook files that will just add so much more depth and richness to this whole conversation. And, and then you get the book and you can read the written version of it. So coachshansmith.com/daddy will take you to the right place. And I love engaging and answering questions. So please, anybody that has anything, reach out to me, send me a direct message or an email, Sean@coachshansmith, and I'm happy to engage however I can. Sorry, I cut you off. What were you going to say?
No, the audio, so worth it. I mean, I'm an auditory person anyway, but I was on those 10 calls live, and
You were.
Just the like you said, rich was the word that came to me too, is just so much value added to it. So it's worth a snapshot and an email to get that for free. It's like a no-brainer.
Yeah. Well, thank you for that. And the instructions and all that stuff is just right on the website. Well, I really appreciate co-creating with you here. And like you said, there's hours and hours that we can talk about, but I'm happy to support and serve and help in any way that I can. And thank you for who you've been in our community and what you stand for moms all across the world. And as a result of that, kids, you're really empowering our younger generations, as you have with Xander directly in your home.
Thank you. And I'm supposed to say those things to you because you're my guest, but I appreciate everything that you've, given into my life. And the very first email I opened of yours said, "I wish you more pain." And that pissed me off so much because I was in so much pain at that moment. I was like, who is this never wishing me more pain? And it literally changed my life. And like I could cry, but I gotta go. So
that's cool that was the first email.
Yeah.
I gotta cook something up for 2023.
Yeah, wish people more pain. And
I think so. Yes.
So
well, thank you again.
Absolutely. There will be another episode of Imperfect Momming next week. And until then, keep healing. Bye, guys.
Thank you for tuning in to Imperfect Momming. It's time for us to step up and realize that our power is not in trying to shape our children. Our power lies in shaping ourselves into the people we want our children to model themselves after. Don't just do it for your kids. Do it for yourself. When you become a more self-aware, compassionate, and confident person, you and everyone around you benefit. For more information about me and my work, visit AliciaLyons.com. That's ALYSIALYONS.com. See you next time.